Do you ever feel a sudden, sharp pang of familiarity for a world you never actually lived in? You're walking through a museum, or perhaps just digging in your own backyard, and your hand brushes against something cold, heavy, and strangely shaped. It smells of damp earth and oxidized copper, a scent that feels like a forgotten language. We think we know our ancestors. We see their marble statues and read their stoic poetry. But there is a secret history hidden in the objects they touched every single day. Objects that perform tasks so alien to our modern minds that they feel like artifacts from a different planet. Take, for instance, a particular wooden handle found in the ruins of Rome. To a casual observer, it looks like a simple tool. But this object held a social power so intimate and so profoundly disturbing by today's standards that it completely redefines how we view the glory of the Roman Empire. It wasn't just a tool, it was a shared necessity that carried a hidden danger no one spoke of. Before we reveal the true nature of this wooden handle, you have to imagine the Roman Forum. It wasn't just a place for politics, it was a sensory overload. The smell of roasting meats mixed with the pungent aroma of open gutters. Romans were famously social. They did everything together. And I do mean everything. In these stone latrines, there was no privacy. No stalls, no dividers, just a row of people in tunics discussing the latest Senate decree while attending to nature. But they lacked something we take for granted every single day. Something soft, disposable, and private. Instead, they had the torsorium. It was a natural sea sponge fixed to a stick. Now, here is the part that makes our modern skin crawl. It wasn't yours. It lived in a bucket of salt water or vinegar at your feet. When you were done, you used it, rinsed it, and left it for the next person. The tension here isn't just the hygiene. It's the realization that for a Roman, the concept of personal space simply didn't exist in the way we understand it. The torsorium was a tool of communal bonding, as strange as that sounds. But while the Romans were sharing sponges, ancient sailors were dealing with a mystery of a different kind, a tool that allowed them to see through the very walls of the sky.
The Vikings were the masters of the North Atlantic, reaching North America centuries before Columbus. But how? They didn't have magnetic compasses. On a clear day, they had the sun. But in the North Atlantic, clear days are a rare gift. Most of the time, the sky is a flat, featureless gray. If you lose the sun, you lose your direction. If you lose your direction, you die. Legend spoke of a sunstone, a magical rock that could locate the sun even behind thick clouds or after sunset. For centuries, historians thought this was a myth, a bit of Norse fluff to make their sagas sound more heroic. The secret lies in the tactile reality of the crystal itself. When you hold a piece of Iceland spar, it feels cold and waxy. But it has a unique property, double refraction. By rotating it toward the sky, the crystal splits the light. When the two images are at equal brightness, it points directly at the sun. It was an optical computer made of rock. The sunstone allowed the Vikings to see the invisible. But while the Vikings were navigating the fog, the ancient Romans were desperately trying to save a different kind of treasure, a plant so valuable it was worth its weight in gold, yet so complete it left behind only a single haunting image. Imagine a plant that could cure a fever, flavor a feast, and, most importantly, act as the world's first reliable contraceptive. This was silphium. It only grew in a narrow strip of land in modern-day Libya. It was so essential to the Roman economy that they kept it in the state treasury. The Romans loved it to death. Literally, we have descriptions of its taste, sharp like garlic but sweeter, and its smell, which was said to be heavenly. But by the time of Nero, only one stalk remained. He allegedly ate it just to see what the fuss was about. Why did it die? Some say over-farming, others say the climate shifted. But the tension here is the heart-shaped seed. You know the heart symbol we use for love today? Many historians believe that shape didn't come from a human heart, but from the seed of the silphium plant, a permanent silhouette of a miracle we can never taste again. We lost a plant that could have changed history. But as the centuries rolled on, humans created something far more unsettling.
a job that required a man to literally eat the sins of the dead.
In the rural villages of England and Wales, there was a man everyone feared, but everyone needed. He was the Sin Eater. When someone died unexpectedly, without confessing their sins, their soul was in peril. They would wander the earth as ghosts. Unless, of course, someone took those sins from them. The process was silent. A piece of bread and a flask of ale were passed over the corpse. The bread, theoretically, absorbed the sins. The Sin Eater would then eat the bread, effectively taking those sins into his own body. He was paid a pittance, maybe a fourpence. But the real cost was social. He was a pariah. To look him in the eye was bad luck. He lived on the edges of the village, a human dumping ground for the darkness of others. The last known Sin Eater died in 1906, taking 1,000 secrets to his grave. He was a living bridge between worlds. But while the Sin Eater dealt with the soul, the people of the early industrial age were struggling with a much more practical problem: how to wake up when the world is still dark.
Before the alarm clock was affordable, how did you get to the factory on time? If you were late, you lost your job. If you lost your job, you starved. You couldn't rely on the sun in a smog-choked London winter. Enter the knocker-up. Armed with a long stick or even a pea shooter, they would walk the streets at 4 a.m., tapping on windows until they saw a face. They wouldn't leave until they knew you were awake. The smell of coal smoke, the rhythmic tap, tap, tap on the glass, this was the heartbeat of the Industrial Revolution. But here is the tension. Who woke the knocker-up? It was a recursive mystery that kept the whole system from collapsing. Most simply stayed up all night, living in a permanent state of exhaustion, so we could have our modern world. The knocker-up was replaced by a ticking clock. But long before the clock, there was a device found at the bottom of the sea that proved our ancestors were far smarter and more modern than we ever dared to imagine.
In 1901, divers found a lump of green, corroded bronze off the coast of Greece. It sat in a museum for decades because nobody knew what to make of it. It looked like a clock, but it was 2,000 years old. When we finally X-rayed it, the world of archaeology shivered. It contained over 30 intricate bronze gears. It could track the movements of the planets, predict eclipses, and even time the Olympic Games. The tension is the gap in history. This level of technology shouldn't have appeared again for another 1,500 years. It's a forgotten thing that suggests a branch of human knowledge was completely severed. If this device hadn't been lost to the waves, where would we be today? Would we have reached the moon by the year 1000? If you walk through the woods of an old estate, you might find a stone door leading into the earth. It feels like a tomb. It's damp, dark, and smells of ancient stone. But in the 1700s, this was the ultimate status symbol. Before the refrigerator, how did the wealthy have cold drinks in July? They harvested black ice in the winter, wrapped it in straw, and buried it in these deep, brick-lined pits. The ice could last for over a year. Imagine the tactile shock of touching a frozen block when the air outside is 90 degrees. It was a defiance of nature. But as soon as electricity arrived, these temples of cold were simply abandoned, left to become homes for bats and echoes. The ice house became a relic of a slower time. But there is one more object, perhaps the most poignant of all, that reminds us that while technology changes, the human heart and how we process our deepest sorrows stays the same.
In ancient Rome, and later in the Victorian era, people carried small glass bottles. They weren't for perfume or medicine, they were for tears.
When a loved one died, the mourners would catch their tears in these vials. It was said that once the tears evaporated, the mourning period was officially over. It gave a physical weight to an invisible emotion. We don't do this anymore. We've optimized our grief. We move on quickly. But looking at these tiny, fragile things, you realize what we've really forgotten: the value of sitting with our history and our feelings until they naturally fade. Our ancestors lived in a world of physical consequences. They felt the weight of the stone, the texture of the sponge, and the cold of the ice. When these things vanished, a part of our sensory experience vanished with them. We are the curators of our own time now. One day, the things you touch, your smartphone, your car keys, even your favorite coffee mug, will be ancient things that someone will struggle to imagine. So I want to ask you, what is one object from your childhood, something you can still smell or feel in your mind, that the world has completely forgotten? Tell me about it in the comments. Let's keep these memories from turning to dust.